Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I am joined with my lovely co host.
Maria.
Indeed, and I am William, the much cooler, smarter, more intellectual host. I got to go second, so I got to make stuff up.
I'll allow it.
The book we're doing today is Truth of the Divine by Lindsay Ellis. We had previously read her book Axiom's End, and this is the sequel to that, and we really liked that book. There were certain issues with it, but Maria especially, I feel like you could say, gelled with the characters.
I fangirled so hard. I uh I described it as everything, like when I went to fan fiction for comfort and like a specific type of, like, it was everything. It was just like I didn't just want to eat a piece of the cake. I wanted the whole bag, and Ellis gave it to me. God damn it! Like she gave it to me good.
We're a little bit more ambiguous about this book. We'll get to that in a little bit.
I wear black for mourning. I don't actually.
The basic premise of Axiom's End is it takes place in the 2000s, and it's about aliens coming to Earth and the everyday girl who ends up being the translator for one of the aliens. They get wrapped up in homeland defense type things where they're trying to communicate with the aliens, and the aliens have their own agenda. The girl is called Cora. The main alien that she translates for is called Ampersand. And it's a really fascinating book in how it portrays the aliens because they feel extremely foreign and alien in their thinking. These aren't just aliens with weird foreheads and like rubber noses. They are bizarre and strange, and they think differently. And a big part of the book is Cora learning to communicate with them and the interplay between the civilizations. And it was fascinating. We really loved it. And especially Cora and Ampersand have a very emotionally intimate relationship. Lindsay Ellis does video essays, and she has one called Romancing the Monster about, Beauty and the Beast and the Shape of Water and that trope. And it certainly is at play in this novel and in this series.
Alien boyfriend. But like they hadn't labeled it yet. They sort of labeled it by the end of the book, but they weren't putting any labels on things until
and they're not exclusive.
Yeah, they're not exclusive, but he did fusion bond her. So like, congratulations, you're family now.
Right, which is a way that the aliens, who are very post scarcity, post biological in a lot of ways, they fusion bond, and then they and the other alien that they fusion bond with are connected biologically speaking. And in the case with Cora and Ampersand, they actually feel each other's emotions, which is kind of unprecedented. And that's really where this book starts out, Truth of the Divine. It starts out with the two of them kind of having to grapple a little bit with their emotional states are now entangled with each other. Cora especially is having like nonstop panic attacks from the stress of, there's the financial collapse going on because it's 2010. And then also she was
2008.
And she was also very badly injured by one of the evil aliens last book. And so she's kind of trying to work through that. Obelisk, yes. And that's where this book starts. And I think the beginning of it is very much in keeping of tone with Axiom's End for at least like the first 3 or 4 chapters.
Axiom's End very much was, and Will and I spoke about this, it felt like the majority of the book existed to put Cora and Ampersand, and which isn't to say that there wasn't other stuff going on. It definitely was laying groundwork for a later book. Please don't think I'm trying to like simplify Ellis's work, but it just felt like it was, the purpose of that book was to bond Ampersand and Cora, like as characters, how that happened to the plot, so on and so forth. And the first few chapters definitely felt like a continuation of that. You finish Axiom's End, and if you're like monster boyfriend trash like myself, you're immediately like, give it, what is happening, fusion bond, take me, like, and the entire time I was like, what is this going to mean for them? How is this going to change their relationship? How is this going to evolve? And like Will said, it starts by coming in with that they can feel each other's emotions to the point that when like she has panic attacks, he can feel it, and it'll make him anxious. What Cora doesn't realize, and what gets mentioned later on in the book, is that she's also feeling his emotions, because this book is about trauma.
Very much so.
And
what's interesting about it is in the way that, so the aliens are very post-natural. So they have very little like empathy and who they consider human and who isn't is very, or a being of worth is very interesting. And one of the ways that that manifests is that they don't actually think you can heal from trauma. Like the best thing you can do to someone who experiences trauma is just to put them down. Like they don't have therapy, they don't really have a way of dealing with that. And so ampersand is viewed by his kind as irreparably damaged, and he kind of should just be put down. And so to me, in Axiom's End and in this one, that to me was so fascinating because it's a way for him and Cora to bond and really talk to each other, and for there to be worth in humanity for him. And unfortunately, that does not get explored enough in this book, in my opinion.
It might in later books, but yes, there. So I was really excited because you end Axiom's End not only figuring out that they fusion bond, but another thing that happens towards the end is you learn about Ampersand's trauma. He confesses that he's killed people, but he's not happy about it. He was imprisoned for years. He has trauma because of that. So you have his trauma. Cora goes through a lot of traumatic stuff. She has a bunch of family trauma related to her father. And so I kind of started this book, especially when we're immediately met with Cora having a panic attack as the first scene progresses. I thought, oh, this is going to be the two of them dealing with their trauma, overcoming their trauma. And I knew because of Lindsay's foreword to the book that here there be trauma. But she very clearly in her foreword is like, there's no alien love. But more importantly, there's suicidal ideation. There's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of things in this. And so I thought it was going to be very much tied in with Ampersand and the two of them finding the empathy and caring for each other and working through these shared and unshared traumas, because the two of them also create a little by having these panic attacks that bleed onto the other person. They're like just compounding trauma. And that's where I thought it was going. And the beginning was promising with it because Ampersand is like, oh, you know, you're having these panic attacks. You're obviously all of this stuff. Like, and she was like, I don't know what triggers it. I don't know what causes it. And he was like, well, why don't I try help you? I'll study it, see if I can figure something out.
I'll stay with you at night.
I'll stay with you at night. Because she's like, he was like, you know, I can study you to try figure out what's going on. And she was like, yeah. And then he was like, but we have to do it in like a secure location where you're comfortable. And she was like, well, I guess it's going to have to be at my apartment. And he was like, great. See you later, babe. That's not what he said.
Your memory is extremely accurate, Maria.
I am the most accurate. And so he comes over. She's nervous. And he like calms her down, and then he puts the stuffies in her brain, and then they cuddle, like, and he gives her sedative. Once she's cuddled for a while and she's happy, he puts her to sleep because she's been having bad nightmares with a sedative, so she doesn't have any nightmares. And they do that like for a while, like a couple of weeks or something. Like it happens pretty regularly. And I was like, yes, this is why I came here. Take me.
And then things change. Basically, what happens is that they figure out. So Obelisk, the bad alien from the book before, was a sim file of ampersands, which is basically like a family member that you make. Like you are bonded to that sim file extremely. It's like a family bond. It's stronger even. And what we find out is that Obelisk hadn't died entirely. Ampersand took his brain and cut off some of his memories and put them in isolation, and he is still alive and trying to make Obelisk better. And Cora is just horrified by this because she cannot deal, she still has so much trauma over it. And at the same time, another sim file of Ampersand's kind of shoots in onto the planet called Enola at first, and then later Nikolai. And we are probably going to refer to her as a she, even though technically the book refers to her as a he, but gender is really kind of arbitrary for these aliens.
And there is a comment where Cora says that if they'd actually asked, there's a whole discussion of alien genetics, and that Enola probably, like, she makes a comment like, Enola probably you would use she for it, but everybody just refers to, in Cora's head, they're all just he's. That's just how she refers to them. But yeah, Enola comes out onto the scene, and that's actually why she found Cora stumbled onto Obelisk, because like I said, everything's going great, cuddle sessions at night, and then there is the big bang where there's like a big light in the sky. It looks like the planet's going to die. Like there's this energy thing coming at them super bad. Ampersand's also kind of worried about it, and he's like, oh shit. And then it just sucks back into itself. And then later something lands And Ampersand immediately is like, oh shit, someone's coming. They're coming. They're going to kill us. They're going to find us. They're going to kill us. They're going to come. And he said kill us, and Cora thought it meant her and Ampersand. It did not, as she soon discovered. And then the U.S. government is like, you need to help us, because they were Ampersand, even though Ampersand goes wherever the fuck he wants. Like, they're like, we have Ampersand locked away. And Ampersand's like, no. I go where I please. I've been going to Cora's house for like 3 weeks now. And they're like, you need to be more helpful. And because the Department of Defense has taken over instead of Rosa. And so like...
And Lindsay Ellis has not actually gotten any better at writing official military people. It's less of a problem in this book because there is actually just less interaction with them, which helps.
Significantly less. But the big general military guy is like, you need to go to the site where this Enola Gay object landed. And Ampersand's like, no. Fuck you. And what I mean by that is they were like, we'll make you, because they said like, that's not an order. You're doing it. And Ampersand shatters all the glass in the room. All of it, just shatters it all. And then picks up all the pieces with his mind and melds them back together to windows and puts them back into place to be like,
that's what's up.
Yeah? How? like what the fuck are you gonna do? Cora ends up going with, what's his name, Saul. She goes to this event. While she's there, she sees a dark, curly-haired man giving her mad stink eye.
Are those ears or curls?
Curls.
Okay, all right.
And he's giving her mad stink eye, and she in her eyes, it's a look of death. Like this man's got death in his eyes, and she thinks it's directed at her, and Saul's like, man, that guy's bad news. Stay away from him. And then there's like stampedes, shit's going down. Cora has to run. She gets separated from Saul. She's like, Ampersand, yo, look, I need your help. You gotta come help me. So he whisks her away and brings her to his
secret lair.
His secret lair that he's made, that he created, this cave into the side of a mountain. And while Cora's knocking about in there by herself, she finds Obelisk. And Obelisk is in Jeffo's body. Jeffo is...
a dead Symphile of Ampersand's.
No, he's not a Symphile. That's the next...
I thought Jeffo was.
No, that was the
We thought, yes.
We thought think.
Jeffo was an Ampersand, a Symphile.
You think.
Right, okay.
But
I
it's
fell for
not.
the party line.
You did. And she's immediately, like, the horror, like, here's the creature, and she knows immediately. It's in Jeffo's body, but she immediately looks at him and is like, fuck, that's Obelisk. That's fucking Obelisk. Oh my god, he's Obelisk alive. Like, what the fuck is he doing? This is terrible. And then at some point, she ends up, like, running into...
Well, okay, so what happens is that she, I don't remember if it's now or in a few scenes, but she freaks out Obelisk so badly that he runs off, and Ampersand has to go and try to catch him, because Obelisk's old memories of the reasons he was there and being evil start to come to the surface. And while she's alone, that creepy guy from before comes and runs into her, but at the same time, this new alien...
No, you misconstrued.
Yes.
Okay, when Obelisk runs off, it's after this scene. When Enola's tied up. She goes, she sees Obelisk, she runs, she's freaking out. A car is coming at her. She's waving to the car so she can be rescued because she thinks, fuck you, Ampersand. And she runs out. This car is coming at her. It stops. The guy gets out, and it's the guy who she thought was trying to kill her from earlier. And she's like, oh, fuck. Oh, no. Ampersand, help me. And then Enola's there. And Enola is terrifying. Enola is jet black, so all she is are just these eyes.
We should state for people who haven't read the book or didn't listen to the first podcast, the aliens basically, to me, in my head, I always imagine them as a cross between a velociraptor and a mantis. And that's kind of a cyborg version of it, and they're usually white.
If you added a deer/dragon-esque body, you would get, like, plus the mantis, plus the velociraptor. That's how I picture them. But Enola has a jet black skin, so much so that you can't see in this dark wood California night. They're in the woods. You can't see Enola's body. It's just eyes staring out at you. And Enola's voice is really weird. She manages to talk to Cora, and she's like, what is happening? And then Ampersand comes, and Ampersand and Enola have a whole fight. They take out, like, the guy that was shooting death glares at Cora, gets knocked out. And then Cora has to use the little...
It's basically a handheld EMP that Ampersand gave her that can knock out the aliens.
That you can point in a direction, and it'll affect that direction. So she's like, this is going terribly. Ampersand is not winning this fight. So she knocks out Ampersand and Enola, And then she has to run all the way back to, this is where Obelisk runs off.
His
Man, I
Batman
was
cave.
right. She runs back to his Batman cave because she's like, shit, I need to get the pill bug, which is what she calls the thing that can revive Ampersand after one of these attacks. So she runs back to the Batcave and she goes, she gets the thing. Obelisk is there and she's like, what did you do to my beloved? Also, in my head, Obelisk was also a girl. So I don't know why.
Same.
I don't know why. I can't tell you, but I'll refer to Obelisk as a he.
You're definitely right.
But anyway, so Obelisk is like, what did you do to my beloved? And she was like, fuck you. So she EMPs her. She EMPs Obelisk, but it doesn't work super well. And then, but when she EMPs Obelisk, it shakes the part of his brain that was being held away that had the memories of what happened. So Obelisk remembers everything and Obelisk runs the fuck off. And Cora's like, God damn it. But also, good riddance to good rubbish. And she runs back out to the woods and she like poofs Ampersand. She EMPs Ampersand awake and then...
Well, so what Ampersand does is when he wakes up, he actually starts like disassembling the body of Enola, the new alien, in a really kind of vicious way. And he takes her back to the cave and ties her down so that she's like trapped. She's a prisoner now. And they do the same with the guy with the curly hair, who later we're going to find out is called Kaveh. I forget what his last name is.
Mazandarani. Mazandarani.
Yeah, and so Cora keeps him hostage, and they keep Enola hostage, and Ampersand is like, look, my Batcave is a mess right now, but I gotta go find Obelisk. You hold down the fort here. And Cora tries to do that for a bit. What happens after that?
I can tell you. So first off, the reason he's being really vicious to Enola is Enola's using some substances to number one, numb her emotions, because Enola also got some trauma, and like it's a bit of a performance enhancer kind of thing, but it's what's made her skin black, and he needs to slowly take that blood out of her and get like clean blood back into her. And so there's just all this black. Their blood's black gunky stuff all over the floor. It's a mess. Cora kind of feels bad for Enola. Enola's knocked out.
But she's also terrified.
Because there was a point where like when Enola was talking to her and saying things to her, Enola's terrifying initially. Just incredibly mysterious, where like Ampersand was always alien and odd. He was, and like she would be frightened. But Enola in the beginning is legitimately terrifying, like horror movie-esque. And so while Ampersand is gone trying to find Obelisk, Cora's pissed. First off, she's like, you just don't care about me. You just like Obelisk. But she starts talking to the guy that she tied up to a tree for like 8 hours.
And he's actually our second viewpoint character in the book. So he actually gets a viewpoint.
But anyway, so we get Kaveh, who I like as a character. I don't love some of the directions that
and
things
this is
happen.
where Maria is wrong, because Kaveh is a garbage character. I'm just kidding. I don't love him as a character, which we'll talk about, but I think he's not a terribly written one or anything like that. I just don't like the role that he plays in the plot.
This is the start of the section of the book, which again I was okay with at this point, where Ampersand is MIA. Ampersand is off trying to find Obelisk before Enola does, before the other aliens can figure out that Obelisk is still alive. So the Fremen, we just did Doom. The Fremden group does before the government finds out.
Which are the more normal aliens.
Ampersand's goal initially is he just needs to keep all his sim files alive, and Cora doesn't, because during this part the majority of his focus is on getting Obelisk and getting Obelisk safe, and Cora feels a little bit like she's been emotionally abandoned. But in Ampersand's mind, she's safe. Like, you're fine, you're good. This guy is not. Like, he's physically is not in a place that I can like control, keep him safe. You are, stay there. And like Cora, she's got a lot going on and shit's been scary. So she starts talking to Kaveh, and her immediately, once she realizes Kaveh is not trying to kill her, and he was shooting murder daggers at Saul. It wasn't even at her.
Right. Kaveh is like a world-renowned journalist with like a Pulitzer Prize.
2 Pulitzers.
He was on The Daily Show, according to the book.
And he works for the New York Times. One of those. It's a prestigious publication. Anyway, and Kaveh is like, I like Kaveh, especially in the beginning, because he's just fascinated. Like, he saw aliens and he's like, I need to know, like, what's next, what's happening. And Cora is immediately worried because she hears journalist and she thinks like her dad, like someone who's at any.
For new listeners, her dad is basically Snowden, but with even less morals.
Oh, so much less morals. That's a thing that got expanded on in this book.
Yeah.
That whew, what a guy. But Kave's big thing that I loved was he develops a bond with Enola, and Will and I both fucking love Enola. My girl
Enola is the
Enola,
Bamf of this entire book.
she is such a Bamf. She kills it. As a character, her dialogue is really engaging. It still feels alien, but in a completely different way. Like, and Enola
From Ampersand.
is like, if Ampersand has trauma and is thus the odd man out in his like alien race, Enola was always that. Like, Enola always was the black sheep. Excuse the
And what's
pun.
interesting is that actually makes her more human in certain ways.
Yes.
So she actually relates to humans more, and she actually finds us interesting, not in the way that Ampersand is terrified of us as savage meat eaters. That, and more than anything, he's afraid that we are actually people. These monsters are actually people, and that's scary to him. Whereas Enola is like, hey, would you like to know the truth of the divine? I'm basically a physics professor from an alien race who knows a shitload of stuff. She's great. And she calls Kaveh dear clever creature, which is just really cute because he's the one who helps her out when she's. Kaveh also had substance abuse issues, so there's a kinship there. And he like tries to get her off of whatever the drug she's on is that she makes for herself.
He cleans her, like, because she's in this sticky, like, it hardened to like this hard molasses thing. So he's sitting there wiping her. And he said, like, at a certain point, he had to make sure she was clean, but because she's the same color as the blood stuff, he'd have to wipe her with, like, a clean rag to see if it was, like that level of detail. So they have this beautiful scene where they talk, and he basically says, like, you know, I won't free you because I don't know what the fuck you're going to do, but I'd like to talk to you and ask you questions. And he answers her questions, and they just develop, and throughout the book, throughout the first 2/3, develop a really nice relationship. And she just... I really like her. And you discover from her that Ampersand was not Jeffo's Simphile. He done lied. Ampersand, I made a point in the last video that I went the most of the entire first book just thinking Ampersand wouldn't lie. Ampersand lies a lot, guys.
It's funny because I think that too. I keep thinking like he's not outright lying, but he lies all the time.
Yeah, no, and this was an outright lie. He told them that he was here because he was Jeffo Simphile, and that's why he got called. No, Jeffo was Obelisk and Enola's Simphile. Also, I refer to her as Enola. I don't know why, but that name stuck with me. She ends up getting a legal name of Nikola.
And I don't like that as much either.
I don't mind it. She's named after Nikola Tesla, which I completely like understand.
Lame.
I understand the idea of not calling her Enola because Enola Gay was like a really terrible, earth-shattering like thing. And
yeah. But that's why it's cool.
Yeah, Kaveh didn't want it associated with her. But anyway, and Enola, because Enola's like, no, because he calls Cora little cousin, and Cora doesn't pick up on it. But I immediately, because he was like, a little cousin, where's our beloved? And Cora didn't pick up on it. It takes her a while to realize, but immediately I was like, oh, Enola can see that they've been bonded, and immediately it's just like, this is the lay of the... Hi, little cousin. Welcome to the family. You're not my Simphile, but you're my Simphile. I'm going to take care of you. Because, like, when Cora's upset about stuff, she'll be like, how can I help? And then Cora's like, I don't have answers about things. And Enola's like, I will answer your questions. And I'm just like, Enola, you so cool. You're rolling with things. And
there's a beautiful scene where one of her things is like, she tells Cora, like, free me and I will tell you the truth of the divine, which is like stuff about Ampersand and how fusion bonding works. And so Cora eventually gets so fed up with Ampersand that she lets her. And Enola explains to her in a desert
that she refers to as her metaphor. She went to
yeah, you are in the metaphor.
She's in a sand, what are they called? A sand...
I thought it was a sand. I honestly thought it was a sand flat, but it's
a salt flat. It's a salt flat. It is a salt flat.
Oh, okay, it is. Yeah, it's such a cool scene because she's showing her with like the visuals of drawing the sand into different ways and spinning it, and like it stuck with me because it was so beautiful and the way she described it was really cool. And Enola is just the best. Sorry, that's what's up.
She just is. She's very smart. She's caring initially in a way. like there's a point where Ampersand had a panic. Oh, so Cora got fed up with Ampersand, let Enola out. Ampersand flies over to where they are, and he's like, "Get away from my Cora, stop it." And he starts panicking, like having a panic attack, which at this point we've seen Cora have several.
So we should state that Enola, the reason Enola is on Earth is that Symphiles in their culture, in the alien culture, they pick a time to die because they could essentially live forever. And Symphiles pick the same time to die so that they don't have to be alone.
And they don't have to experience grief specifically.
Yeah. And so what she's done is she's come to Earth to die with Ampersand. So not exactly murder, but like that's kind of what she wants to do. And Ampersand kind of feels like she may force him into it. And so that's why he's terrified of her, is because he can't fight. She's more advanced than he is. She actually can like manipulate energy in a way that none of the other aliens can. She does this at one point to scare off some of the bad aliens. Because again, she's a bamf. But yeah, so that's why he's terrified. And he essentially has a panic attack so severe that he becomes catatonic. And Enola takes him and Cora back to the motel that they're staying at.
No, not just that. That's not it. This is also the scene where the three similars show up. And Enola does that thing that you were just referring to. So while Ampersand is delving deep into the depths of a panic attack, Enola's like, he shouldn't have done that. And Cora's like, what shouldn't he have done? She was like, that noise when he broke the sound barrier, they're going to be looking for that. And Cora's like, they who? And it's the three similars that used to work with for Obelisk and now are hunting Obelisk. So they pop back up, and a battle goes down, and Cora's like, Enola's gonna get wrecked. Like, these guys are so big. I've seen how they work. Enola, you are not strong enough. And Enola uses this knowledge of physics and skills that nobody else has. Again, she's a creative thinker. And one of the things that makes her really unique in her species. And she, like, wrecks everyone. And Cora takes them all back to Kaveh Mazandarani's house. Not just the motel they're staying at. Literally, it's Kaveh's house. Because he comes home. Because he had been, like, he'd left Cora to sleep. Also, behind all of this...
We'll get to that. We can fill that back in a little bit.
Yeah, anyway.
That's the part of the book that we don't like. At this point, I should say that at this point, I was so into this book. I really loved it.
Everything.
There wasn't the weird lull that there was in the second book where they're hanging out in a bunker for way too long. There's action. It's stuff that Lindsay Ellis is better at writing. We get Enola, who again... bamf. And, there's like cool stuff going on, and we're learning more about the aliens. And to me, there were two things that I thought really worked in Axiom's End and made me want to come back. One was Cora and Ampersand's relationship, and the other was the world building of the aliens and the way they interact and the complexity of it, and how the book foregrounds interacting and connecting with aliens as the main conflict of the story. So it has a reason to delve into that material. It's not like, oh, I'm Tolkien, I'm going to talk about something unrelated for 3 paragraphs and then come back to the plot. No, the plot of the book is the complexity of the aliens. So at this point, I'm loving the book. It's good. There's a problem that has reared its head, but we'll go back and fill that in later. So what happens at this point is Cora and Ampersand have a conversation where Ampersand is like, look, I am freaking out because I don't know what to do with my Symphiles. I don't know how to handle this relationship with you. I really don't like that I am getting your feelings all the time. It's, it's being soul banned. It sounds cool. It's actually kind of terrifying in real life. And also, I am having to deal with the fact that a bunch of meat-eating predator monsters I now understand are people. And I may be the only one of my species who realizes this, and I can't go home. I am too damaged and too different now to ever go home, not to mention they would all kill me. But and so he is homesick and he is tired. And that really comes through and excuses a lot of his behavior up until this point. Ampersand throughout this book kind of goes through, he'll do something dickish, and then later on you'll figure out why. And you're like, oh, okay, that was somewhat more understandable. And unfortunately, this is the last really big conversation him and Cora have. Because what happens next is Enola is going out with Kaveh, and she sees a big rally. And what's happening in the book, up to this point it's been seeded, is that people know that there are aliens, but they haven't really met any of them because the Cheney administration, because Bush resigned, has been keeping all of the information about them under wraps. So they're kind of freaked out, and there's a lot of discussion about what rights should aliens have, and a lot of people are pushing what they call the third option, which is they aren't people, but they have certain rights like people. And this is viewed in the book as not a good thing. Because the idea being that you should not, once you start saying what rights aliens can and can't have, it's a very short step from there to going, well, some humans should have certain rights and not other rights. It's a greater critique of really the fascism that's happening right now all around the world, but transposed into 2010. And it's actually one of the more clever conceits, I think, of the book. So Enola sees this big crowd and she's like, I'm a cool alien. I'm going to go say hi to everybody. And Kave's like, don't do that. That's a terrible
Not
idea.
just that. They literally, like, there's this guy, his something Miranda, and he's like, show us the aliens. We want to know. Show us the aliens. We want to see them. And Enola, being the fabulous, kind, but weird creature that she is like, you asked, I shall take down my cloak. And Kaveh realizes immediately when Enola's gone off to do this, and when they start being like, show us the aliens, he was like, oh no. Enola's just the kind of person that would be like, I guess. And so it happens. Everybody starts freaking out because not only is there the third option people who are like, don't give aliens the same rights, there are also
straight up neo-Nazis, like homegrown militia neo-Nazis.
There's a term from them. But anyway, those guys are there too. And somebody slipped to them that EMPs work against aliens. So they got a truck with a giant EMP attached to it. So they start rolling it in. Kaveh is like, Enola, please go home. Stop doing this. And she was like, she literally is like, but he asked to see me. So I did the thing. And meanwhile,
talk to them for me.
Yeah. And Miranda's like, there's a fucking alien? What's happening? And Kaveh's trying to deal with the situation and things are getting violent. And then Ampersand and Cora show up. And Ampersand at this point is just like, veil off. He's just there. The EMP goes off and it's Cora and Kaveh standing in between like this violent mob and these dead aliens. And at one point, Cora's wrapped herself around Ampersand and there's a gunman with like a gun pointed in her face. And she's like, no, don't shoot Ampersand. They don't shoot them. People are taking photos. It's a thing. And it was a great scene. It was truly a great scene following very shortly after what had the salt flat scene, which had also been a great scene.
I remember the point in the book where you and I were reading at the same time, more or less the same scene, and we were so pumped. We were like, this is great. I was up at like 3 a.m, which is late for me because I'm old, and I was like playing StarCraft at the same time, and I'm like, I can't stop. I really want to keep listening to this. This is really good. And then we reached...
And just to put it in perspective, I was telling Katie, because we were trying to initially get our other co-host to read Truth of the Divine in time to be able to do this. And I remember she was reading Axiom's End, and her interest and then lack of interest was the exact opposite. For me, I started getting interested like once Ampersand and Cora were doing shit on the run, like when there was the whole scene with the cops and everything. And that's when Katie started getting bored and uninterested. So I was like, maybe she shouldn't read it. But I was like, listen, The Truth of the Divine is so good. It fixes like all the things Will and I potentially had issues with. It's fixed. It's better. Like the plot twists are beautifully like laid out. You believe them. There's like plot, like just... It's so good. You have to read it.
What sweet summer children we were.
I still maintain this part was fantastic. I don't think that the last third half isn't great.
I do.
Oh boy.
Okay, so basically, here's what happens. Another EMP goes off, Ampersand goes into a catatonic state, and him and Enola and Cora and Kaveh are taken back to the government. Basically, Ampersand does not recover from this catatonic state. Cora stays with him, but she's almost catatonic as well. Enola, during this part, is using Kaveh as her translator to talk to the government, and she's actually a lot more helpful than Ampersand ever was, and she's much more curious. But what happens is that when Cora cannot get Ampersand to get out of this catatonic state, she actually cuts her wrist to try to get him to do anything. And he immediately reacts to heal her, but after that still doesn't say anything. And this marks the point in the book where Kaveh is like, she can't handle this, she needs to go home. So he takes her back to his apartment.
His place.
And this is the part where earlier in the book they went to the Cheesecake Factory.
Also, not just, sorry, it's because it starts for Cora not here. Like I said, the minute Cora realized he wasn't trying to kill her, she was like, oh wow, he smells delicious, like musk and vanilla.
I don't like it.
And his hair is
I don't like
so,
it.
I want to touch it, and
Nope.
God, he'd never be interested in someone like. And now, granted, I'm making fun of it because I don't like this direction for their relationship. I would have preferred if it never got romantic.
Mm-hmm.
But like as a 21-year-old, also, I have pinned down her age, guys. Last time I was like 22, 23. No, she's 21. As a 21-year-old girl meeting a handsome 35-year-old guy
Nope.
who's also nice and attractive, very
No.
successful. I understand where Cora is coming from.
Here's what's up. When they started doing
ampersand, what's up?
the footsies, okay, here's what happens. If you guys remember in the previous episode, Maria was all about ampersand and Cora, and I was like, I mean, it's interesting, but I'm not super into it, right? Like it's okay. This was the point when her and Kaveh started doing footsies that I was like, no, Cora and ampersand are what is up. I am not down with this cheating shit. Keep your filthy human Homo sapien hands off my girl. I don't like this at all. It really was like that. It was very funny. I was actually surprised by how strongly I felt about it because I did not like it. And they almost have sex, and then ampersand almost kills Kaveh. And then here, once Cora is basically catatonic,
not because they were having sex. She ended up having a panic attack during a different scene, not when
which
they almost
Kaveh
had
is
sex.
helping her through.
He's helping her through. Ampersand realizes, because there's something Kaveh does that sparks her
post-traumatic stress.
Yeah, ampersand blames Kaveh, almost kills Kaveh. So yes, continue.
Okay, now we go back to the middle of the book where ampersand is now catatonic. Kaveh takes Cora home, and this is the part of the book that I refer to as the mopey sex apartment, because basically what happens is Cora is almost catatonic with depression. Like, she is not doing well at all. Kaveh is really horny. He's just like really into it to a weird amount. Like, I don't think he's a bad character, but it is a little weird how into her he is. And so they start like having sex, and like she doesn't go back to see ampersand again. It's a part of the book where they are separated, and basically she and Kaveh are just hanging out in the apartment. She's super depressed. Kaveh keeps going to talk to Enola, and that part is interesting. But Cora essentially just goes darker and darker into this depression to the point where she does self-harm. There's a lot of suicidal ideation. There's a lot of panic attacks. It's really heavy. And I should state that, like, when she has a panic attack in the book, the voice actress in the ebook
audiobook
sounds like she's having a panic attack. It's like, a lot. It's tough.
It's like, I can imagine reading this book is stressful and like sparked, but the audiobook actress, I mean, if there's an award for audiobook actresses, we're done. Give it to her. There's no need to announce other nominees. Everybody go home. It really, like, she screams, and like that, it hits
And here's
you.
the thing. I mentioned in the previous episode that I thought Cora was kind of mopey and it irritated me. In this one, there's a lot more motivation for her to be mopey. She's genuinely going through a lot of trauma and stress, and it is written well on the part of Ellis, right? It's written well. It makes sense. I'm just not that interested in it if it doesn't relate back to how her and ampersand relate. That was what was interesting to me. And two, I have this rule that I kind of feel like things should only be as depressing as they are good or interesting. And it isn't super. I didn't come here to see Cora's emotional problems. I came here to see Cora's emotional problems relating back to ampersand and to explore aliens. And during this period, Cora is very specifically alienating herself from the alien aspect of the book. So she's thinking about going to college. She's meeting Kaveh's family.
In this period, Enola and ampersand go missing.
Before that, though, Enola talks to Kaveh about how, ampersand had told everybody that the alien superorganism, the civilization, originally ampersand had said, look, they're going to wipe you out, but that'll be in like thousands of years. And Enola is like, no, try like 20. They know you're here. They're not happy about it. They're going to come here. I got here fast because I'm a BAMF who can control physics, but they're going to get here within like 20 years and kill you all. Why don't I just take you, ampersand, and Cora, and we take like some genetic material and we start the human race on another planet? And Kaveh's like, I don't know about that. I don't know if I want to do that with my whole life. And Enola's like, well, I don't want to do it with anyone but you. Like, I love you, dear, like, clever creature. I don't want to do this with anything else, so it's up to you. And so Kaveh eventually decides, like, no, let's not do that. And then after he basically says no, Enola and ampersand go missing.
So yeah, and it just, like, pace-wise, it becomes way more slice of life but dealing with mental illness. Because Kaveh realizes at a certain point where Cora, she gets into such a bad panic attack that she hurts herself in the shower. And he realizes he has not been paying attention. He has not been handling this right. He has royally fucked up and he needs to deal with this. But first, he has to get her to the hospital. The people at the hospital are like, "Did you do this?" And then they're like,
in your culture, things are different with women. And he's like, dude, I'm from California.
they're like, "Did she do this?" And it's this huge issue where Cora doesn't want to get, despite being a little bit of a danger
Suicidal.
to herself and suicidal, she doesn't want to be, and Kaveh also knows that it's not a great idea. She doesn't want to be Baker acted, basically. She doesn't want to get put in an institution. She doesn't want to be held against her will. So he's trying to help her. And he eventually, at that point in the book, because it's so bad, he realizes he needs to really do things to change. So he starts giving her like writing projects. This is where we really start getting to her planning her college life again and all this stuff. He meets her family and it feels slice of life, and it just like, and then it becomes like slice of life but with legal, like we're fighting a case, like a civil rights.
There's Senate hearings on the third option, and Cora goes and witnesses or whatever it's called. And
Testifies.
yeah, it is very slice of life, and I don't like it because I'm not here for the Cora Kaveh show. Like, I'm just not. Again, it's not terribly written, but this is not why I showed up to this book. What honestly kind of what it feels like is it feels like Lindsay Ellis really got into writing this part and really got deep into the character, and she kind of forgot that this was off topic. Like it's off topic to an extent from the book up to that point. It makes sense as a, well, okay, cool, this is the part in the novel where Cora is most away from ampersand before she'll go back type of a thing. Like this is what life could look like without ampersand, and that's the temptation. I understand that structurally, but I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy reading it. It's honestly it's depressing. Like it's something that stuck. I finished this book a week ago, and like
We both.
yeah, it leaves an emotional impression that's really rough and difficult and whiplash, and I don't think it was really worth it. And honestly, it wasn't interesting. I literally started speeding up how fast I read the book because I was like, okay, I kind of want to be done with this now. Like, I'm not interested. So it's depressing and boring.
And it shouldn't have been, but with the, oh, thank cat.
For listeners of the podcast right now, Maria's cat is waving his tail and butt right in her face. So come to YouTube and you can see exclusive content.
Oh,
Like
you're
this.
getting cat bored. You got cat butt. The camera got it. Anyway,
cats have just no compunction about their buttholes.
They have none. And like the trial is pretty interesting because I actually liked some of the legal stuff. I would have loved way more input from the aliens. I think the only alien who gives like any input is Enola because, you know.
Okay, so that's another thing is that at the end of the first book, Obelisk told one of the things he talked to Ampersand about was like, you're not going to be happy here. You were bred, genetically engineered to be a hierarch, to be one of the leaders. You are naturally going to try to take control of a human superstructure and put yourself at the top. And how would you not? You are superior to them. And I thought that was fascinating. I was like, okay, this is going to be a really interesting concept of like, how does he integrate into the society? And none of that happens because Ampersand is MIA for over half this novel.
I'd say about 2/3. Like if you collectively
He's
put it
not
together,
in a lot of it.
he's not in a lot. But anyway, I knew I wasn't as invested in the human side of things as much as I should have been. And again, this might not be like other people might have really enjoyed this part, and that's fine. But I knew I wasn't as invested as I should have been when during the trial that guy dropped the knowledge bomb that some people died, that Obelisk killed people, and not only killed people, but disintegrated their bodies instantly. Cora knew that they died. The CIA knew that they died. Nobody published it. Nobody has published that these aliens can kill people like that, or that someone's already killed a bunch of people. And he drops this on Cora in the middle of Cora's testimony. And this senator actually got the information from Cora's fucking father. So there's a scene, sorry, I'm gonna go on. This is the part that I cared about, but I didn't actually care about when like the thing was brought in the court. And I just, by that point I was so There was no aliens around. They were so devoid. Like, the aliens were so separated.
There hasn't been any cuddling for almost 200 pages.
But the aliens were so separated from this issue. Like they weren't involved. Like, if you had an alien that was there that was like, yes, I shall testify for myself. Can I testify? Am I even considered human enough to like? I would have been like, if they had a Nola during the scene, and if Nola was part of it, if the aliens were part of it, I would have been way more invested. But the aliens, to be having this whole argument about these aliens, and meanwhile the aliens are literally like, listen, we're gonna fuck off. We're gonna be gone. Bye, guys. Now, granted, important civil rights issue that needs to be dealt with. But again, I just wasn't into it. Back to the thing that did make me super mad. So there's a scene where Cora's getting media attention for the photo of her, like, protecting Ampersand, like, against the gunman. And her dad's like, oh shit, this, if she starts talking shit about me, it's going to really ruin my image.
It's also worth pointing out Nils is for the third option.
Yes.
Like, he's for the Nazi option.
Not even because he is for it, but because he thinks they're the best to help his brand. Because he has a huge problem with his brand being fucked with. And he thinks Cora being popular and talking, and she does a successful interview on a morning show, and he is very threatened by that. And Miranda's like, well, you know, her and Kaveh seemed close. We could spin that. Like, we could totally sell her as a mentally unstable girl under Kaveh's wing. And Nils's response is, oh, you're a gem. Thanks. And so it's actually Nils who he blackmails Kaveh into giving him some dirt from the CIA and the alien operation. And it just so happens to be, and Kaveh doesn't realize it, the tiny crumb enough for Nils to find out about the people that died because of Obelisk. And so that I thought was fucked up. Like, Nils is a terrible father. But also, again, it's super devoid from the actual plot. We never see Nils. We don't see her family at all.
Yeah, her family is not even really mentioned.
At all.
Part of that, I assume, is to isolate her so that her and Kaveh can do the mopey sex apartment. And it kind of makes sense that she just doesn't trust her family. Which
Luciana calls herself out on.
Yeah, her aunt.
At the end of the book, her aunt is like, man, I really abandoned you, so you just ran straight to that guy. And Kaveh never does anything bad. Like, Kaveh never, like...
I mean, there's a certain amount of gray consent in this book that's complicated and actually quite well handled, if very dark.
Mm-hmm.
But... yeah, but no, I mean, we're meant to view Kaveh as a good character.
But it just, like, it puts things in perspective for Luciana. And I just, like, it did not spark joy.
It's not aliens. I came for aliens. I came for cool world building, and I came for alien fusion bonding, high language.
Yeah, I wanted more with the high language. And you get the thing from Enola that, like, her and Ampersand should not be able to feel each other's feelings at all. There's a point where Ampersand goes to sleep, and a huge portion of her panic and anxiety just disappears. Because he finally passes the fuck out. And she realizes, oh shit, I got a lot of him in me, but not in the way I wanted. There is a fun scene in the beginning, and again, like within the first 4 chapters, where she thinks about having sex with Ampersand, and like, it doesn't turn her on, but she's like, it wouldn't be the worst thing. Like 4 times, she was like, it wouldn't be, how would it work? It wouldn't be the worst thing.
Which only makes her later betrayal at the hands of the Homo sapien even worse.
And it just, like, I came to this book, and again, I was putting a lot of my expectations onto Alice's second book, but I also felt like the first book made some promises.
Yeah, in terms of the reading experience.
Yeah, and now granted, Alice was very honest in the foreword and said this tone is going to be very different, guys, but I thought it would be different plus aliens. Because, like, I am here for darker shit going down plus aliens. The track of most romances are book 1, it's the will they won't they. Book 2 is shit goes bad, they spend some time away, it's the worst of things. Book 3, they've come together, they're strong, and they're going to deal with external things that have to be dealt
I think
with.
The problem is that it's not just that it's dark and their relationship kind of goes downhill. It's that it's dark and the relationship goes downhill and they're separate.
And they're so separate.
As I was saying to Maria, there's so much complexity and interesting things in their relationship that to just see it taken off the table instead of dived into, it's I wouldn't say sad. I just really wanted that explored, and I think it's a waste.
Yep.
So we should probably finish up what happens in terms of the events to get to the last part. Basically, Ampersand is trying to
So during the trial, and the guy's like, "You knew, and they killed a bunch of people," rah! And Cora's like, "I'm gonna have a panic attack." So she runs to the bathroom, and she's panicking, and she's like, "Ampersand, Ampersand, I need you to come get me. Like, this is real fucked up. I need you to come get me. I need you to come get me." Ampersand's not answering, and then all of a sudden you hear, "I can take you away, little cousin." And she's like, "Enola," and Enola's like, "Here, I'll take you away. Will you help me, little cousin?" And I'm immediately like, "Enola, what the fuck you doing? Like, I love you, but you's a crafty bitch. What you doing?" Um, so she spirits off Cora, and at first you don't know what's happening because Kave's like, "Where the fuck did my girlfriend go?" And you get his attention for a while, and eventually Enola takes him to Cora because, like, Enola wanted Cora to help her figure out what Ampersand was gonna do and to find Ampersand and Obelisk. But Cora was so depressed and so anxious and so trauma-induced that she couldn't do anything. So Enola comes to Kaveh and is like, "Listen, I need you to get your girlfriend together because I need her and she's not doing any of the things I need, and I'd like some use out of her, please and thanks." So Kaveh is helping her, and through this, they figure out the best chance anyone's going to get for, because what they discover is Obelisk cannot get off the planet, and he needs to because these people are hunting him without a similar body. And his best chance at a similar body is to get
his old body.
Yeah, his old one that is being transported to another place. They couldn't get into the facility where it was being held, but while it's being transported, it's going to be really easy to access. Cora figures this out, and Enola hears it and was like, "Thanks, little cousin. That's perfect." And she was like, "Aren't you going to take me with?" And Enola's like, "Why would I take you with? We're gonna kill ourselves." Because at this point, shit's going really bad. Enola knows that Kaveh won't go with her, so she's like, "Back to plan A. Plan B didn't work. Water off a duck's back. We're going back to death, suicide." And unbeknownst to Cora, Enola has made a deal with the three similars that are hunting Obelisk that if she gives them Obelisk, they will leave Ampersand and everyone alone. And then Enola and him can happily die. Everybody goes to this thing. So yeah, this is where you were picking it up. You go, Will.
Right, yes. So Ampersand ambushes the convoy taking Obelisk's old body. Well, okay, so Ampersand is there, Obelisk is there, Enola is there, Kaveh and Cora are there. And also Obelisk's minion, but they're not super important. Basically, the neo-Nazis show up and shoot off an EMP and then start shooting at them, and they end up shooting Kaveh, and Kaveh dies. And Enola is like, get wrecked and just murder.
Because that was her human. Like Ampersand got to have a human. She had a human too.
Yeah, and so then what happens is that Cora is done with this shit, and she gives Obelisk to his retinue to take back to the evil aliens. Then Enola takes Ampersand away, and Cora goes to the hospital, blah, 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 blah. Then she goes to follow them, and what happens is that Enola has now started taking the drug again, so she's pitch black.
Yeah, she didn't do it because of Kaveh, because he told her not to. But now he's dead.
Kaveh had been like, "Okay, don't kill yourself, don't take drugs," and she's like, "If you say so, dear clever creature.
I know it'll make you happy."
Every time the aliens want someone dear, I just find it the cutest thing. It's so endearing. And so at this point, Enola's like, "Okay, no, we're gonna die together, me and Ampersand." And Ampersand's like, "Yeah, I don't really want to keep doing this. I'm tired." And so Cora, at this point, she's really hurting because she loved Kaveh, even though that makes no sense because he's a dirty Homo sapien. But she's like, "Okay, I can't kill, it's giving up is not the answer, even through all the pain I've been through. We got to live through this, Ampersand." Ampersand's like, "I'm never going to connect with anyone. You guys are all weird." And she's like, "Okay, but what if we work together to try to change my brain chemistry so that we can speak through high language," which is like the aliens. That's how the sim files talk to each other. It's not telepathy, but it kind of is with more steps. And then he's like, "Oh, okay, that would be kind of cool." Enola's not cool with that. She's like, "No, I really wanted to die today. That's what's up." So they're able to overpower Enola. Her brain goes into storage. And on the news, they see that the ambush has gone national, right? So there's this enormous conversation now about, okay, look at all these poor family men who got killed by an alien, the neo-Nazis. And other people are like, "But clearly she shot them with their own bullets, so they were shooting at her, and clearly Kaveh was shot by them. He's a Pulitzer Prize winner, and it's a whole culture war." Cora's just looking at it, and Ampersand's like, "Why don't we go somewhere else to like another planet?" And Cora's like, "Yeah, that sounds good." And that's how the book ends. So it's the inverse of Kaveh's decision not to leave.
Enola slits Ampersand's throat.
Yes.
And then kills herself. Yeah, she didn't just, they didn't overpower her.
Overpowers is...
No! She did everything! Nobody overpowered my bitch Enola. Shut your whore
Okay,
mouth.
fair enough.
She slits Ampersand's throat, and I forget how, but Cora needs to get him, because they can self-heal, so she needs to get him, like, his system's going enough that he can self-heal himself, and so she uses TVs and water, and she ends up electrifying herself, dies, kind of, electrocuting herself, dies, kind of, has a conversation with Kaveh in the afterlife, and Kaveh's like, listen, babe, it's not your time. Go back.
I didn't like it. I wanted him to stay dead.
He is dead.
Well, he should have stayed silent dead. I don't even like that in the next book she's probably going to feel bad about him. And be like, oh man, I really loved Kaveh.
That's when she wakes up, and then the question happens of her going, and it just, there's so many, all my favorite parts of this is tied to the aliens. The finding out the real reason Ampersand bonded with her, which was to see if it was even possible. Like
So it should be said that in the last book, Ampersand had said that he bonded with her because he needed a way to communicate with her over long distances.
And to track her.
And he thought she was going to die. And then in this book, Enola reveals in the scene where she talks about the truth of the divine and the salt flats, that actually that's not biologically real. That's not how that works. And so later Ampersand tells Cora that, like, no, at the time I needed to know if you were really a person with a soul, essentially, and if I actually cared enough to go through all this work to save you. And he found that she was. He didn't expect it to work, though. So they're stuck together essentially because he was just testing to see if she was a person.
And then earlier in the, because there's a couple of things that tie into the about face when Ampersand's like, no, I'm gonna die, and then like, no, we'll do this. Earlier, there's a scene where they talk about desires they're ashamed of, and Cora mentions like, I was thinking about what sex would be like between us, and it's kind of shameful. And she was like, you probably don't understand that. And he was like, no, I got shame. He was like, I desire you. And Cora's like, you desire me. And he desires to know her. He desires to experience the high language with her and have that intimacy. And he very much,
again, with what he considers to basically be a monster or a feral animal.
Yeah. And he expresses it in that way, and which, you know, puts it in, because that's exactly how Cora is ashamed when they snuggle or anything. She's like, oh my god, people would look at this and see, like, why am I doing this with a monster? And then he mentions something like, it would be great if you could do high language. And she's like, well, if I can't, oh well. But she finds out from Enola that the human brain could probably be adjusted so that you could. And then she forgets this piece of information right until she's trying to talk Ampersand out of suicide. So when she throws it at him, initially when I read it, I was like, man, this was a really quick about face that he would go from like too. Really. But in retrospect, and I think this could have been connected better, but I do think it was laid out. There's two things. Number one, he really desires to know her. And number two, Ampersand's a curious motherfucker. Ampersand literally bonded himself to a human. He also did it because she was nice to him, and none of his friends and none of his people were being nice to him at the time, his species. But he's really curious. Like, he also studied stuff. Him and Enola worked together. Ampersand also, you discover, Ampersand realized that humans were an advanced species back when he was studying them for language stuff. But specifically, Enola figured it out and was like, yeah, no, they're gonna advance. And Ampersand's like, we can't let people find out about it. We need to kill the experiment, and we need to tell the superorganism they're just animals. So Ampersand literally, he has this like emotionality that, again, his people think is taboo, but he chose by killing, because Cora's like, why did you kill all those people? Why did Ampersand do this thing? Because they killed all the test subjects. And he did it so nobody else would discover that humans were actually smart and that they were potentially people.
Yeah, I think the problem with that reveal for me was that it didn't, it's like that cheesy thing in kung fu movies where they're trying to learn a technique at the beginning, and then at the end they're able to do the technique they were having trouble with at the beginning. Mm-hmm. Like, as cheesy as that is and as set up, I never thought that Cora would not be okay with learning high language if it was physically possible. So to have that be like, oh, we can do this thing, it's like that wasn't a growth arc that she went through. I felt like it was a little bit weird as a culmination of their their problems together in the book.
So for me, what I felt like, it was less that she hadn't thought about it, but I think she realized, because her and Ampersand hadn't had a real conversation where this would have come up since she learned that her brain, because Enola was the one who was like, no, your brain could do this, because Ampersand also didn't know if it was possible. And so when Cora's like, no, Enola said, and again, this whole time they're calling Enola Nicola. So I'm so sorry. Those of you who are listening or watching this, it's really bugging you that I consistently I'm using Enola's, like, the name other people gave her. I'm dead naming. Am I dead naming? Yeah.
No, that's not what dead naming is. Considering that she herself has no strong feelings on name or gender.
And also, she didn't pick Nicola. She likes Nicola, but she didn't pick it.
And then when she was trying to pick a last name, she wanted Kave's last name.
So anyway, I got that, like, realizing it could be possible, why that would wake Ampersand. Like suddenly there's a thing you can do. Because at this point, Ampersand no longer has a thing. He can't protect Obelisk. He'd be more helpful to Cora by being dead, because all he can think is, my pain causes her pain causes me pain. It would be best if one of us died, and I do not want her to die, so it's got to be me. So he's run out of things to do. This guy who needs to have a purpose has nothing. And then by telling him, well, Enola said I could do high speech, but we have to figure it out, it gives him a thing to do.
Yeah, that does make sense. I think, again, my issue with him is more Cora's side of it. The other big problem I had with the ending of the book was the Obelisk plot does not wrap up in a way that is satisfying. It does wrap up, and it serves a plot purpose in keeping Ampersand on the outs throughout the book, but it feels like Obelisk got out, and then he got caught by and then Cora gave him back to his familiars. Like, it feels very kind of like a weird reason to resurrect a dead character.
Yeah.
To just be like, he's here, then he's gone. I was expecting more, especially because he did show a little bit of a different personality when Cora encountered him, because he'd had his memories set back. So I was like, oh, okay, this is an interesting thing that could be explored, is like how he develops now without those memories. And it's not, he just like up and leaves.
I completely agreed, and I think I mentioned this to Katie or someone, that it also bugged me that nothing happened the entire time I was waiting for Obelisk to do something.
That's true. Yeah, he does nothing.
He does nothing. He escapes, he gets captured, and he gets taken back to the other planet. That's it.
Yeah, that's actually very true. He's an incredibly passive character, so it feels like, okay, this wasn't... Yeah, especially considering how intimidating he was in the first one.
And how much, like, Cora's scared of her.
The one thing I did like about the ending, it really taps into when she's looking at the screens, and in general, a lot of the book. It's funny because back in, like, if you watch movies or stories from the 70s or the 60s, they're always all about the Cold War in one way or another. That was such a hot cultural thing that everything is about that. And it feels like this book is very much about the time we live in now, where, you know, like, let's be real, half the country follows a fascist, undemocratic cult. Like, there's that rise in fascist populism around the world. And when you watch the news, there is this existential despair at the state of the world and of humanity. And I felt like this book actually captured that really well in terms of its neo-Nazi group and the whole third option question that they're talking about. And at the end, when she's listening to all the TVs, and it's like, some people are saying the right things, but a lot of people aren't saying the right things. A lot of things are blaming Enola for having shot these people who were trying to kill her. And so, like, I did feel like the book captured that really well, that, like, I kind of just want to leave this planet. Like, it's believable that Cora would just be like, dudes, I'm out. And it's kind of an interesting contrast to Kaveh, who didn't say that, because he does have a family. I mean, we do see how integrated he is with his large extended family, whereas Cora's family is shitty all the time, and they're not actually even in this book. So, I mean, I did think that was interesting, but it's also not really why I came to this book. So it's a little bit like, it's not badly done, but it's not interesting to me.
I think it just connects back to, it's not what I was here for. And again, I would have been here for more of it if their aliens had been more directly involved. Like, or even if they weren't involved with what was going on, but if they were, like, just interacting with their humans. Like, again, I liked the portion of the book where we were pretty much just getting Kaveh and Enola in the beginning, just interacting, because Ampersand was off trying to find Obelisk. Like, I liked that part because there was still this alien interaction. I was still learning about the aliens, learning about them in relation to humans. I liked all of that stuff. And I liked all of Kaveh's scenes with Enola a lot. I really liked them in relation to each other. I mean, obviously, as you've all figured out, Will is not a fan of the Kaveh and Korra romance. I wasn't.
What romance? Mopey sex apartment.
I just didn't want it. Like it just wasn't. And the thing is,
You know what it's kind of like when you create a work, you create certain expectations for the reader, right? There's an extent to which art is a product, and this can be seen crassly in something like James Bond. James Bond, what's a James Bond movie without action, hot girls, or drinking? You know what I mean? Like that's why we came to do this thing. And you come to a noir book because you want it to be moody and dark and somewhat morally gray. We came to this book because we wanted to read about the complexity of their relationship and the history and how the way the aliens are portrayed. And so to then have Mopey Sex Apartment is not that's not one of the reasons we came, and it's not actually that natural an outgrowth in terms of the experience we were interested in. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it, but I didn't go to the roller coaster to go slow.
Yep.
So I don't know. I've seen some people really like this book and talk about how it gutted them. I mean, and that's the other thing is that for me, that was a lot of dark emotionality to go through for something that I did not care about. Like it was taxing. It's taxing to listen to someone have panic attacks like 6 or 7 times.
It emotionally affected me. Like I don't want you guys to think that like, oh, it was boring. She was depressed, but you couldn't really feel it. Oh, you felt it. Like
no, you feel it, yeah.
And it's well depicted how to handle it. Like the things she does a great job of handling trauma, depression, all of that stuff really respectfully, honestly.
I think it just went on too long.
And again, the aliens weren't there. Again, I would have been so much more okay had it been like Ampersand or even Enola helping her through some of those panic attacks instead of Kaveh.
That would have been much cooler if instead of Kaveh, it was Enola helping her through it all.
I would have loved if there had been some Korra and Enola bonding. I would have been here for it.
Did you almost say boning? Because I would have been into that too.
No, I did not. I did not say that.
It was a very disappointing book for me.
It was. And for me as well, we both have been mopey
feeling
since
the blues
we finished it.
Week.
Yeah, like, and both, like, every time, because I finished it and I felt bereft. Like, when you finish a book and you leave this world that you were so happy to be a part of.
Yes, that's exactly the feeling.
Not just was I bereft, but I hadn't gotten. So, perfect example. The ending of The Last Graduate, gutting. Emotionally impactful. Like, and it made me like, there was so much emotion, but the book had been so good.
I'm like, holy shit, why is the next book not
out?
But I didn't feel empty in the way that this book makes me feel empty and kind of haunted. And like, this is exactly the feeling that fanfiction is there to alleviate, is to go and be like, okay, let me fill in what happened there and kind of ease you out of the fix you were looking for and didn't get. And you have actually mentioned to me The Last Graduate in terms of that is a book that did something very different from the first book, but in a way that you didn't see it coming, but it made sense, and it was why we went there, and it was gutting, but it was gutting in a way that was really interesting and fulfilling. And so I've been trying not to think about this book for like a week now.
Yeah, and so we both, because initially we were both like super pumped to talk again at that halfway point, and it literally was for me right after the salt flat scene and being like, Ellis is a master of her craft. She is a queen. I did not think coming off of the high of The Last Graduate that I would be like, it had just, because we did Axiom's End, because like, great. Then we did Last Graduate, and it was great. And then I was reading this, and I was like, oh, I'm so here. And it's even better. Like I didn't think it could be, but it was. And then like, and again, the first half is very different than the first book. So I'm not saying being different from the first book is bad. The whole, like, you got way more scenes, way more locations, all this stuff. Like, Enola comes crashing in, and Ampersand and Korra's relationship immediately changes once Enola hits, like, a fourth into the book. So there's a whole section that I was still there for, even when they were separated, but there was all this other stuff happening. And so it really just is that, I don't like using it, but the mopey sex apartment that really,
yeah.
And it just like,
it really ruins things. I didn't come for that. I came for aliens, and aliens and Ampersand's missing for half the book.
It got me. Like, we were so excited, guys. I can't describe.
It was the highest high we've had while reading this whole podcast.
I don't want anyone to think we just didn't like this book. That isn't the
Again,
case.
I really love the first half. I thought the first half was so good.
Up to the riot scene. Up to the riot.
It is almost a weird, like, a decisive moment when the gate closes. I think in terms of the third book, I'm still interested to see, because I don't think Ampersand is going to take a long vacation again, and I still think Lindsay Ellis can write him well.
And because she said not yet.
She said not yet to the,
She said
to the
not yet.
Bonin thing.
She
That's
said
true. I also, though, I'm kind of wondering, because the arc of the book has to be Cora deciding not to leave Earth, right? But that still leaves the question of the aliens are going to come and kill it in 20 years. So, like, that seems like another arc after that. So I'm kind of interested to see how she fits both of those into one book. But I mean, I think it can be good. I'm still looking forward to reading it. I'm just still very wounded. It's not like The Last Graduate where I was like, I need the next one now.
now.
It might actually have been easier if there was one out now, because I could have just gotten and passed it and read to the next part and forgotten this part of it. But what about you?
Yeah, I'm still looking forward to it. I think we are gonna, I hope the next book starts when they are on another planet by themselves together, because again, I like it when they bond, and being by yourselves on another planet together is like a surefire way to make sure there's no one else around to distract the plot. I'm really there for that. I am very here for that evolution, like you said, of Cora getting to the point where she's like, no, we have to go back. We can't just abandon all of humanity. Like, my little sister is still there. What are we doing?
Kind of existentially finding hope again in humanity.
And I think that will come from her and Ampersand bonding, and Ampersand finding the beauty in humanity, potentially through her, that thus reminds her of what is great about humanity. And I'm here for all of that. And I really hope I get my sexy time. I hope I get a modicum of sexy times. Like, I deserve it. I am old. And I'm not, Alice. You owe me nothing. You don't know me. You live your life. You do your thing. But I am, God damn it, I am old. I am old. I want my space alien cuddles, please.
That's our review of Truth of the Divine and Axiom's End. Again, I don't think it's entirely negative. We both love the first part. We both hate Mopey Sucks Apartment. We miss Ampersand. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you later, guys.
It. Bye, guys.
Subscribe, like, comment. Did you like Mopey Sucks Apartment? Did you miss Ampersand? Did you want more Enola? Is it really annoying to you that we keep referring to her as a she and as Enola? Let us know. All right. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.